Hi everybody, it's Patty and I am pulling out of my driveway. Let's see, it's just starting to sprinkle, a little bit cloudy and overcast. But you know what? It's spring here in the Ozarks, and I hope that you can see. I'm gonna, before I start driving, try to see if you can see the dogwoods. They are absolutely gorgeous. They're just gorgeous. The dogwoods, the red buds. I am taking Bagel to the kennel. We are going, let me see if I can turn around and you can sort of see well, you might be able to see a little bit of the house. But snuggled up in the woods there. Oops. Back it up. But it's gorgeous. Oh, I'm taking Bagel to the kennel. We're going out of town for a few days. And so she's fine with it. She loves this lady. I think the lady, it's at her house, and I think she keeps Bagel in the house, actually. She's been keeping Bagel her entire life. So it's something that Bagel is very familiar with. But it is, sorry about it being bumpy. The rains we've had here lately are starting to wash the road out a little bit. As you can see, this is a gravel road coming off of this mountain. But, you know, spring is just starting to happen here in the Ozarks, and a lot of the dogwoods are opening. In another day or two, this whole forest will be white. Literally white. Everywhere you look, there are dogwoods. And when they're in bloom, there's just nothing like it. I think of spring as a new beginning. Now we're off of the gravel road. And we didn't see the deer. There are about 8 young deer that have already formed a herd that we're usually seeing down on the road. They're about a year old. And then day before yesterday, the turkeys were, my girls as I call them, were in the front yard again. So you can see the road. I'm going to try to, the canopy over this road is really still, everything is just greening up. It's beautiful after the winter we've had. When everything greens up completely, it will be breathtakingly beautiful. Now, I don't know if you can see the little trout fishing river over to the right. But looks like they have the generator zone. It's pretty full. Usually you can wait it. It's a very popular spot for trout fishing. find on the days that I walk, and I've been pretty bad about it, this is where I walk. I love it. I'm going to miss it. It's pretty certain that we're going to move to Florida. This is one of the things I'll miss. I was thinking that some of you, maybe many of you, have heard the story of the bumblebee. It's a story that Joan Rivers often told when she was selling her collection of bumblebee pins. Also, I believe, I'm not sure, but I believe Mary Kay Ash used the bumblebee as a symbol when she started Mary Kay. But if you haven't heard the bumblebee story, basically what it is that the bumblebee, its body is just huge compared to its wings. Have you ever noticed that? It should be absolutely impossible for the bumblebee to fly. Aerodynamically, he can't fly. His wings are just too small and frail to support the huge weight of its body. But it flies anyway. It doesn't know it can't fly, or it doesn't know it's not supposed to fly. It just flies. So I was thinking, you know, I think the bumblebee can be an example for a lot of us. As a little girl, a young girl in my teens, being raised in the 50s, my mother never one time talked to me about going to college. She never talked to me about my future after high school. And the reason is, it was just assumed that girls back in the 50s, when they graduated from high school, because they had had the typing courses and the shorthand, it was just assumed that if they worked outside the home, they would be secretaries. If by chance we went to college, and my mother never one time mentioned to me going to college, one way or the other. It was never even brought up in a conversation. Maybe because she did not go. But if we went to college, we were doctors, excuse me. If we went to college, we were school teachers, or we were nurses. I can't remember how old I was when I saw or realized that there were female attorneys and female doctors. So we were raised to either be a secretary if we worked, or our other option would be to get married and have children and be housewives and mothers. That was the expected future. I was very fortunate not long after high school that Delta Airlines found me and offered me the job of a stewardess. And I did that for many, many years, and it totally changed the direction of my life. I don't even want to think where I and Delta up on that offer to fly. Forget about my strengths. Forget about my talents. Forget about my experience. Every job interview I ever had, all they wanted to talk about was my experience of being a stewardess. It opened many, many doors for me. I know that some of you had similar upbringings that I did. Maybe you were of my generation and your parents never talked to you about college or what you wanted to do when you graduated from high school. Maybe some of you were abused in one way or another, mistreated. Maybe you were told you were no good or that you were worthless. And maybe you've carried that with you your whole life. I'm here to tell you that your past is not your future. What happened to you when you were a young girl, or a teenager, or a young woman, or last week, doesn't have to influence who you are today and who you'll be tomorrow. Be like that bumblebee who doesn't know that his body is not supposed to fly. Know that you can fly. You can be whatever you want to be. You can do whatever you want to do. There's a big world awaiting. And sometimes it's just the smallest change that we make one day, the smallest decision that changes our world. I was working as a teller at a large bank. I had been at the main office in downtown Memphis for a year. I was offered to move to the Med Center branch, which was a tiny little branch across from the University of Tennessee. I accepted it. Not long after that, this cute little guy appeared at my teller window one day, and he was just about the cutest thing I'd ever seen. And before I knew it, he was paying a regular visit to my window to cash checks. After a while, he asked me out, and I found out that he was a med student from over in, he lived in East Tennessee, or he was there, but he was in Memphis in med school. And we started dating, and we dated for 7 or 8 months. I never really thought about anything else as far as a profession, what I was going to do. And one Sunday, and back then we read the newspaper every single day, especially on the weekends. And although I was very happy with my job, I would still occasionally read the classifieds, the want ads in the newspaper. Oh, I'm talking and somebody's passing me. I would read the classifieds in this one. So that Sunday morning, I got up and I read the commercial pill and I read the classifieds. And in the classifieds that morning, I saw an advertisement or one ad for a stewardess for Delta. Never in my life had I thought I would fly. Never. But I knew of a couple of girls who had gone to work for other airlines. I didn't know them personally, but I had heard. I had never been on an airplane in my life. So my plan was Monday morning when I went on my break to call and see if I could get an appointment for an interview just to check it out. I thought it might be fun. I knew nothing about it, and I figured maybe I would have an interview later in the week if I got an interview. So Monday morning on my break, I called. I talked to the chief stewardess, and she asked me if I could come straight from work that day. And I said, well, I suppose I can. And I remember driving out to the airport for the interview, really not nervous or anything, because never in my wildest dreams did I think they would hire me. After all, I'd never even been on an airplane. And also, I had heard, you know, how we hear things, that it was really, really hard to get on with an airline, that you went for the interview and then you were not supposed to contact them at all. It was, if we want you, we'll call you. So, as I said, never in my wildest dreams. So I got out there and went through the interview process with the chief stewardess. And she said, could you fly to Atlanta to interview with the chief stewardess over all of Delta's stewardesses? And I said, well, sure. She said, okay, I want you to go tomorrow. Your pass will be at the ticket counter. And she told me what time to be there the next morning. She said, you'll just be gone for the day. Told me where to go and everything. Told me they would be expecting me. So I left there. I did not tell a soul. I didn't tell a soul that I was going for the interview. I didn't tell a soul that I was going to Atlanta the next day. Had no problem sleeping, still didn't think anything about it. Got up the next morning, called my boss and told him that we've all done it. Okay, raise your hand if you've done it. I called my boss, I called in sick. I don't remember the excuse I used, but I called in sick. Drove to the airport, got on that airplane and flew to Atlanta, first class. Got to Hartsville, found the stewardess lounge, found the office I was supposed to go to, and interviewed with the biggie. And the interview, if I remember correctly, was maybe 30 or 40 minutes. And she was winding it up, and she said, can you be here in 2 weeks for 6 weeks of school? And I said, well, yes. And she said, great, I'll get all the paperwork to you. And we shook hands, and I stood up to walk to the door, and I said, now you'll be calling me to let me know for sure, won't you? And she said, well, for sure, Patty, the job is yours if you want it. I'm offering you the job. So I got on that airplane to fly home, fly back to Memphis, and the whole time I'm thinking, what have I done? Do I really want to do this? This is big. This is a major commitment, Patty. I'm doing a lot of self-talking. Major commitment. I haven't told a soul. I did not even tell my parents. So we landed in Memphis. I got to my car. I drove straight to my parents' house. And I told them what I had done. Needless to say, they were shocked. But they were very accepting of it. And they were very excited about it. because I think they saw that there was a future there for me. Again, what would have happened to me had I not, number one, read the classifieds that day? Number two, had I not called that next morning for an appointment? Sort of the back end of that story is, after the training, I chose to come back to Memphis to be based there. Back then, when you were with Delta, you had to figure out, they had to figure out how to work seniority out of that class. And there were, if I remember correctly, there were about 25 or 30 other young women in my stewardess class. And what they did is, on the last day, they put numbers in a hat, 1 through 30, say. And they drew numbers. Or you drew a number. And the number you drew was your number in seniority out of that class. And seniority was important because that meant you were if the higher in seniority you were, or the highest person in seniority was the boss on any given flight. They were the person who made the major decisions, who was responsible. Uh-oh. Let's see. Everything's slowing down. Okay, I see now. So you also, trips, monthly trips were bid on, and they were awarded by seniority. So naturally it would be good to have a very low in number in your class seniority, but that, in the big scheme of things, it was just better. The better seniority number you had, the better. I drew number 1. So that was pretty awesome. But when I got back to Memphis, all of those of us who were coming back to Memphis, our first decision after drawing our numbers was, we had to let Delta know of I think there were 6 bases at the time, which base we wanted to go to. And since I drew number 1 and there were openings in Memphis, I got my first choice of bases. When I got back to Memphis, along with a few other girls who, by the way, that was not their first choice, but they were so low in seniority that they had to take what they could get. There were about 5 or 6 of us, but we had to go in and meet with the chief stewardess there before we could actually take a flight and work a flight. And the chief stewardess asked me if I would stay for a minute so that she could talk to me. And I thought, oh crap, she's gonna fire me. That was my first thought, is I'm gonna be fired. I haven't even started this and I'm gonna lose my job. Well, she said, I want to tell you why you were hired. She said she said you had to meet the basic requirements, and you did. She said, but she said, you told me that, she said, I asked you if you were dating anyone seriously, and you told me that you were dating a med student, that you had been dating him for 6 months or so. And by the way, that was one of the reasons I wanted to come back to Memphis, was because of him. And she said, I didn't even tell him what I was doing. And she said, I've been dating a doctor for about 10 years, and he hasn't married me yet. She said, I wanted to get you away from him, just in case he was not planning on marrying you. I wanted you to have some other opportunities. And I thanked her. And it wasn't long after that that we broke up. So I don't know where he is today or what he's doing, or even if he's still alive. Maybe one day I may look him up. No, I won't. I don't care. But making that decision that day, thinking it was something that I wasn't supposed to do, I could never do, absolutely changed my life. Think about that when an opportunity, an unexpected opportunity arises. Why not take a chance? It might change your life. Have you ever made a split-second decision about something, and when you looked at it later, years later, you know that that one decision was life-changing? Maybe it was a bad decision. That can happen too, but I think that's part of making those decisions, especially when you trust your gut. So, let me know if you've ever made a decision and what it was that changed the direction of your life. Thank you so much for watching today. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for giving me a thumbs up and for sharing. If you haven't subscribed yet, I sure hope you will. I've had a lot of new subscribers lately, so know that I appreciate you, and I'll see you soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.